Hari Om. I'm going to speak on a very, very, very important subject of pain and suffering. And it is at the foundation of yoga. The idea of science of yoga came into existence because pain and suffering was experienced. And then people started thinking about it. The masters found a solution to this suffering and pain, and that is yoga. The pain is mentioned in all the ancient texts of yoga, but just not yoga. It is also at the foundation of Buddha's teachings. So I'm going to just give you a little brief background of how this suffering and pain is viewed, is perceived in the science of yoga. The pain and suffering, the Sanskrit word for that is dukkha, and sukha is pleasure, joy, and dukkha is pain and suffering. So let us start. Buddha analyzed this suffering in much more details, and he tried to understand what causes this suffering. What is the reason for this? He was a prince with all the pleasures of life, money, power, every object of desire he wanted, he could get it. But then he went into depression. So all these objects of pleasure, joy, money, relationships, kingdom, power, despite of all of this, despite having control over all of this, he still experienced depression. And in that depression, he tried to find out the reasons for that. And what he came up with is a very powerful realization. The truth, and it can be summarized in 3 lines. It's very beautifully put. The first argument that Buddha presented is Sarvam Kshanikam. Sarvam is all. You use the word Sarva in Sarvangasana. Sarva is all. Kshanikam. Kshanika is momentary. Everything that you see is momentary. Every object that exists is momentary, like my body. The existence of my body is momentary. Every moment it is changing. Every moment it's new. It's actually getting older every moment. Everything that you see, the tree, the form of that tree is momentary. It's changing. So the constant change is a reality. The position of the cosmic objects is also changing. The ocean is changing. The mountains are changing. You know, there are some studies that say that the height of Himalayas is increasing, or the water level is increasing, and the oceans are rising. This is different studies. So nothing in this world, on this earth, in this cosmos is constant. And because it is changing, it causes dukkha, sarvam dukkham. So the reason for pain and suffering that Buddha identified is the momentary nature of every object. The same idea is also there in Bhagavad Gita in chapter 2, where Sri Krishna has told his disciple Arjuna that every object is momentary, and because of the momentary nature, They keep causing pleasure and pain. But ultimately, everything results in pain. My body is changing. Every day is getting old. And I understand that it's getting old. It's changing. It's not same. That's what is causing me pain and suffering. My relationships. I am enjoying a beautiful relationship. But that relationship is not going to last forever. There's nothing constant, and that causes suffering. So Buddha understood the reason for suffering. And what is the solution he has offered? This we will discuss later on, but I'll just mention it here. Sarvam Tyajam. Everything you need to get rid of these attachments to these objects. The object that gives you pleasure is certainly going to give you pain because it's going to change. That object is going to change. The form of that object is going to change. Buddha narrated a very beautiful story. It's actually in the Buddhist literature. We don't know if it's told by Buddha himself or his disciples. But it's a very beautiful story. It's a story of a man who, unfortunately or fortunately, has fell down from the sky into the deep well. Now he's fell down in the deep well. Again, fortunately or unfortunately, he's not completely in the water, but he's hanging on to a tree which is there in the middle of that well. So he's not in the water and he's not out of the well. In between there is a tree and he's hanging on to that branch of the tree. The man says, no problem. I can jump down in the water. I can swim, go to the side steps and climb up. Thinking that he can help himself, he looks down, and to his surprise and shock, he sees a hungry crocodile looking at him with mouth wide open. So the man realizes that jumping down is certainly not a good idea. There is death down if he jumps. So he says, no problem. I can crawl to the wall using the support of the branch of this tree, and then I can again climb up out of this well. When he's thinking about it, he looks at the side and there is a cobra waiting for him. Is looking at him. The cobra is looking at him. Now this is also not a good option because there is death. Now he is running out of options. He can't jump down because there's a hungry crocodile. There's death. He can't crawl to the wall because there's cobra. There is death again. He can't jump up because it's too high. So he's stuck there. And then he looks up and high up in another tree there is a beehive, and that beehive is full of honey, and the honey is dripping from the beehive, and that honey is almost falling down on his face. So if he opens his mouth, he can easily drink that honey, eat that honey. The question is whether he will enjoy tasting that honey, and can he say that, oh, I am so happy, the honey is very delicious. This is a classic example of our life. None of us can escape death. For thousands of years, the history of mankind, there is no one who is immortal. So the death is a certainty. if the death is the certainty, we need to find out what is the way out of this extreme suffering and pain, the pain and suffering of death. But instead, if I start thinking about, oh, I'm enjoying this little food here, oh, I'm enjoying that money there, it is exactly like that story of this man. And this is a very powerful message about the nature of our life. There's another similar story in the yogic literature of a frog. A frog is being caught by cobra, and the cobra has injected its venom into the frog's body. So there is a certainty that the frog is going to die because the poison is already inside. It's a matter of time that the frog will die. But as the frog is caught in the mouth of that cobra and is being poisoned, the frog notices there's a very delicious fly flying around. So the frog rolls his tongue out and grabs the fly and tries to eat and saying, wow, it's so delicious and I'm enjoying my life. This is exactly the situation that I am in. I have found myself in. So this is the reason for suffering as per these teachings. Now why this death becomes the pain and suffering? This is also another interesting thought. Actually, death is just neutral. If someone is suffering, then the death is actually a good thing because the death frees that person from pain and suffering. But then we don't look at it that way. We still feel fearful. We still feel suffering in death. And the secret is in Trishna and Moha. That desire and that attachment. The death becomes a suffering because of attachment that we have to the life. And the desires cause this attachment. The desires cause attachment to food. The desires cause attachment to money. The desires cause attachment to my car. The desires cause attachment to every object. What about people? I'm attached to people. That is also because of my desires. It's a reality that every relationship is going to end. But when a particular relationship is making me feel happy, it's an easy happiness for me. And I become dependent on it. And that's when I become attached. A pure love in the relationship is without attachment. But anyway, we are going to discuss this subject later on in other lectures. So Buddha's idea, just to summarize quickly, of pain and suffering is based on the nature of the object, momentary nature of the object. And then the desires and attachment to this particular form of the object is the problem. So everything is changing, but the desires and my attachments with particular form or particular way, a particular way of relationship, a particular form of my object, say my particular mobile phone. So all these Trishna and Moha, the attachment and desires with the form is the reason. Let's move on. Let's understand the word Sanskrit word dukkha. It will shed some more light onto this state of suffering. Du and kha. If you break the word du and kha. Du is opposite or negative. And kha is actually space, the mind space. So when there is negative sensations in the space of your mind, that is suffering. See, the word mind comes here in a very important way to indicate the dukkha. Another definition of dukkha is pratikula vedana dukkham, opposite sensation, opposite feeling, the feeling that you do not like, that is called dukkha. Another interesting way to look at dukkha is in Bhagavad Gita. And Bhagavad Gita says that the life which is not in line with the Atma. Now I already explained to you the sensory desires and sensory objects. Please remember the example of the chariot, and I told you that sensory objects pull the sensory organs, the sensory organs pull the mind, and the mind pulls the intellect away from Atma. And this is exactly the direction of dukkha. So the desires which cause all of these is causing suffering. This is what Bhagavad Gita is saying, exactly like what Buddha is saying. Then the next interesting thing is, based on these three, thoughts and emotions, they clutter. There's too many thoughts, too many emotions. They keep coming and they dissipate the mental dimension, the mind, the mental resources, the mental energy we lose. And that is suffering. This leads to negative states such as stress, anxiety, depression in our today's terminology. This is what is suffering: stress, anxiety, depression. So basically the stress, you can compare it with this negative word called dukkha, pain and suffering. Moving ahead, yoga talks about three types of sufferings. The first type of suffering is called adhi bhautik, on physical level. Bhautik is physical, 5 elements: earth, water, fire, air and space. These 5 elements actually make your body. So adhibhautik word is sufferings at physical level. Various diseases that we encounter, various injuries. This is adhibhautik suffering. The second type of suffering is adhyatmik, atmic, internal, mental level. Our thoughts, emotions, confusion, anxiety, depression, these are all stress, these are all mental dimension sufferings. Physically, a person may be strong and healthy, but if he gets into depression, he's suffering a lot, and that suffering is same and comparable to a person who is suffering physically from some disorder. You can't say the suffering of a depressed person is less than suffering of a hypertension, uh, patient of hypertension. You can't say that. Suffering is suffering. A person who has PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, it's intense suffering. You can't imagine. They don't enjoy anything in their life. They just become like absolutely, they do nothing in their life. They are so frustrated with this problem that again takes them to depression. Many times the person who is depressed commits suicide. So it's very serious problems. We are going to study the psychological disorders later in our program. And the last type of suffering is called adhidaivik. Now this is something that we really can't predict. We really don't know much about it. We just have to accept whatever happens. Suddenly a tsunami wave comes and thousands of people are dead. Cities are wiped out. An earthquake comes. Someone meets with an accident suddenly. Nothing is known about this. We just have to take it. They say a very interesting story to explain this, Adhidaivik, in the traditions. A man, a good man, is saving. He finds that he's he notices that there is a cobra who is stuck with in between the rocks. So he makes a lot of efforts and he saves that cobra and he releases that cobra. So he's very happy that he's released the cobra. But then what happens? An eagle dives, picks up that cobra, as cobra is a food of eagle, and it lifts it up into the sky. But by mistake, the cobra, he loses the grip and the cobra falls down on the ground. But instead of directly on the ground, the cobra falls down on this man who saved him few moments back. And the cobra bites the man. The man is dead. The eagle flies down, dives down, again picks up the cobra and leaves. What are you going to say to this type of events? They're just sudden. We have no control over it. And these events also cause a lot of suffering. This is Adhidaivik type of suffering. So yoga talks about these 3 levels of suffering. Let's talk about Ashtanga Yoga, Patanjali. Now Patanjali has talked about suffering as kleshas, and he has talked about reasons, what is causing this suffering. And it will also help you understand a bit more about this idea of suffering. Of course, Guruji will again talk about kleshas, but I'm just going to briefly tell you. There are 5 kleshas: avidya, asmita, raga, dvesha and abhinivesha. 5 reasons for suffering. First, avidya, absence of real knowledge causes suffering. I think sugar is very good because it makes me happy. So I'm eating a lot of sugar. I don't know what is the real effect of sugar. It's actually causing me suffering later on, but I don't know that. So because I don't know the real thing, my karmas, they're causing me suffering. Avidya, asmita. Asmita is I. Self-awareness. I, ego. And I think this body is me. I have these certain fixed ideas. I have this certain fixed understanding of myself. And I think I'm right. And that causes me a lot of suffering. I like things in a particular way. And if someone doesn't do it, I don't like it. So that I is a very important force that causes suffering. Many relationships break because of that I. The next klesha is raga. This is desires which cause attachment. This we discussed in Buddha's teachings on suffering. This is the same thing. Raga, attraction to pleasures, and that causes attachment, desires. The opposite of that is dvesha, the repulsion, something that I don't like. That also causes suffering. If you don't like something and your partner brings that home, you get angry and that makes you suffer. And if you can't speak up, then the same anger that is suppressed becomes depression. Yoga says depression is nothing but suppressed anger. And the last one is abhinivesha, fear of death. So Patanjali has analyzed the reasons for suffering in this way. Fear of death we all know, fear of loss. It causes so much of anxiety to all of us. When we are traveling, fear of accident causes so much of anxiety. In the job, we don't know what the boss is going to do. That causes anxiety and it's suffering. You don't know what your child is going to do, causes you anxiety. In relationships, people have a lot of anxiety. So this fear is directly connected with the extreme fear of death. That is fear of loss. So this is Patanjali's idea of suffering. Then let's understand the reasons for suffering. Bhagavad Gita has analyzed these reasons in a very, very powerful way, and it covers everything that we studied till now. Bhagavad Gita says the life that is focused on sensory objects that create momentary pleasure, but they also result in long-lasting pain. This is the real reason. Now, when I get attached to the sensory objects, sensory life or material life, my attachment to that actually causes me the fear, brings me the fear, the insecurities. Because I fear I should not lose this money. I fear I should not lose this relationship. I fear I should not die. So fear is also connected with these sensory objects and our desires with it. So now these desires are for our sensory organs and motor organs. These desires are called kama, and they create attachment. I like chocolate, so I'm attached to chocolate. I need every day little bit of chocolate. So I have my attachment. The attachment can be with relationship. Oh, my partner, oh, he is so kind to me, and he brings me nice food for me, he takes care of me, so I'm attached to him. So my love is conditional love. Because the person is good, the person is taking care of me, I love him. It's conditional love. And any conditional love causes attachment. Unconditional love does not cause attachments, but conditional love causes attachments. In your life also, if you love your child, and then the child, when it grows up, he says to you that, hey, daddy, mommy, I want to go to this country and stay there because I'm very happy there. Because your love is unconditional. You just want the child to be happy. So you say, yes, go. As long as the child is happy there, you are happy. Because that love is unconditional. So when it comes to people, the conditional love creates attachments. Now see, these desires are very interesting. They are causing attachment, certainly, no doubt about it. If you have a chocolate and you eat it, what it does? It creates another desire. That is, oh, I want more, or I want a better chocolate, or I would like to try that one. This is called lobha or greed. You can see it. Second last point. Lobha or greed. So all this possessiveness that we have is a result of this desire. We are fulfilling the desire. The desire fulfillment results in greed or lobha. And that also brings attachment. Why are we attached with money? Because we think money can buy us desires. So to fulfill my desires, I need money. So my attachment with money is actually my attachment with desires. Now see, if you don't fulfill the desire, what happens? If you want to eat chocolate but you don't get it, what happens? It results in anger. And anger is an expression of ego. That also manifests as aggression or selfishness or hatred or jealousy. So look at this, how the desires start their journey and how they cause attachment, how they cause fear, how they cause anger, and how they cause insecurities, greed, possessiveness. And this is the reason for our suffering. The stress that we experience in our life, the anxiety that we experience in our life, the depression that we experience in our life, the anger and aggression that we experience in our life, it's all related to this. So the previous lecture that we studied, physiology of stress and how many disorders the stress causes. It causes diabetes, it causes cardiovascular disease, it causes me hypertension, it causes me asthma, it causes me autoimmune disorders, it causes me mental health problems, it causes me cancer. All of these stress related ailments, yoga analyzes them as our attachments with our desires and ego. So these are the root causes of our sufferings. The whole purpose of yoga is to get ourselves out of this state of suffering. And we will one by one in this program, we are going to focus on the philosophies which talk about this in more details, and also the techniques that help us relieve the suffering and pain of our life. So I'm going to stop here.